Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 5th of June 2016 and the weather has been fantastic all week. Can't believe that we've had sunshine and warm weather for the whole week. I'm very, very surprised, pleasantly surprised that we've had fantastic weather. Hopefully it continues.
And no spraying going on.
No spraying. Yeah, there's a lack of spraying going on, which is a good sign as well. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. We have a guest on tonight. Our guest is a chap called Ken Smallen from the Irish Democratic Party. And if we remember, a few weeks ago, I attended a meeting down at the Collection Hotel, which is something that Ken had set up and organised. And there's going to be a new one, another meeting in a few weeks' time. We'll get the details off Ken when we bring him in. And we're going to be talking about basically what's going on in the country and the state of Ireland and everything else, and loads of things going on. But before we do that, obviously we'll find out what the communication channels are.
Yes, communication channels this evening are...
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, the phone number is 046 927 1212. If you're going to call in from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's going to be 00353 469 271212. We're going to monitor the chat room tonight for questions for Ken Smallen, and you can find the chat room on OYMradio.com. You will see the link there. For the chat room, you can log in and you can ask questions for Ken. You can also chat with the other happy individuals in there. Great group of people in that chat room every week, so a big hi to all of you. We're also going to monitor People's Internet Radio chat room as well, and a big hi to everyone in that room. We also have the anti-social media Facebook. Again, if you want to access the Facebook, you can see that link on the website. It's on the left-hand side. You can check us out there. We also have the YouTube channel as well. You can get some podcasts and some videos that we've done on the YouTube. We also have the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone or your iPhone or your tablet. That's a free link, that's a free application. The link is on the website. You can listen to us on your device, out mobile 24/7. Alan.
Cheers, Steve. Well, you're going to start us off.
Yes, I'm going to start us off. This is genuine. Apparently, it's not a joke, but you couldn't make it up, this being Ireland. But according to the limerickpost.ie, MABS, that is the Monetary Advice Service in Limerick, is in financial trouble. It just seems a little bit ironic that the service that is supposed to help you budget your finances is in financial trouble itself. Fears have been raised that unless funding is immediately restored to Limerick's Money Advice Budgeting Service, hundreds of people in financial difficulty could be at risk of losing their homes. The Citizens Information Bureau, CIB, which funds MABS as an agent of the Department of Social Protection, has suspended funding to the Limerick service, claiming that it is non-compliant. But the hand-to-mouth funding system on which MABS survives means that money to pay staff and bills runs out at the end of this month, leaving 7 staff out of a job and up to 192,000 clients in financial distress without advice or support. So let's just hope that those people who do find themselves in that situation will be aware, or will soon be aware, of the likes of the Hub and lay litigation, because they can help where MABS can't.
That would be irony, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it just?
For MABS to go to the Hub or lay litigation to get help.
Yeah.
Well, look, maybe they should, because the Hub and lay litigation are not tied to the government, so they can use legal determinations and legal standing away from what the government would stop MABS doing. That's why we say to people, go to the Hub and lay litigation rather than go to MABS, because MABS would be restricted from a legal point of view. Okay, the other thing that's on the hit list is, there's an awful lot going on globally as well. Venezuela, I'm sure if you've been watching what's going on in Venezuela, things are really bad over there at the moment. Just a whole breakdown of society is happening over there. And even in Greece, people are, getting handouts of food and everything else. There seems to be a massive breakdown in Greece as well. France are still protesting. And according to the website yournewswire.com, France has announced a permanent police state until ISIS is defeated. Now, apart from that, Deutsche Bank as well, during the week, their ATM systems closed down. They said there was a glitch and people couldn't get the money out. So basically, there's a lot of things, there's a lot more things going on. Weather patterns and weather conditions are happening in certain countries. Flooding is taking place. So there's an awful lot going on. So I would just say to people, just keep an eye out on what's going on across the board, because we're experiencing things globally that we've never really experienced before. We know we've gone through bad times, but I think that's happening again. And especially we have the Brexit vote coming up on the 23rd of June. And of course the warmongering and the fearmongering is happening already. You know, if you exit, this is going to happen, and just so many things that are going on. So I don't know how the people in the UK are going to vote. I don't know what their plans are. Do you want to stay in? Do you want to remove yourself from Europe? I don't know.
Will it be democratic though? That's the question. Or will they do what Ireland would do? You know, if it goes the wrong way, well, we'll just get them to do it again.
But it never is. It's always rigged. We know the system is corrupt.
Yeah.
You know, we just know it is. Even in the UK, we know it's all rigged. So, you know, democracy is dead as far as I'm concerned. And democracy, unfortunately, is ruled by thugs. It's thug rule. You know, 51% of the people vote for one thing, so the 49% have to go along with that. And that's not the way it should be. You should be able to, we should go back to common law and Brehon law. That's what we need to do. But unfortunately, to go back to common law and Brehon law, we need to be adults. And there's a lot of people that rely on the nanny state. They're incapable of making adult decisions. You know, like if you're going to go out drinking, you don't take your car, or you make sure you have a lift home. You know, I mean, that's an adult decision. But there's some people that will go out, take the car, drink, and get in the car and say, oh, I'm okay, you know, and then they could end up crashing the car, hurting themselves or hurting somebody else. You know, that's what I'm saying. So there's people out there who cannot make that decision to say, well, I'm going out drinking tonight, so I won't take the car or I'll get a lift. They need the nanny state to bring in a law to stop them from doing it. And this is the problem. This is why we need to move away. We need to all grow up and become adults and become responsible. But I can't see that happening. It's going to be a very, very long time before that happens. And we've talked about this before on the show about, you know, most people's mentality is you get to the level of teenager and you're stuck there. And they are stuck there. And age is nothing got to do with age. I have relatives in their 80s and in the 70s and 80s who are still in that mentality. You know, it's just the way it is. They don't grow up. They don't become adults. So, and, you know, how can we fix it? Maybe education. I don't know. We'll have to see what we can do anyway. How's your week, Steve?
Normally I say my week's been fine, but this week I haven't really done too much. I know I said it last week I was going to be looking at some more information, some videos I had to catch up on. But unfortunately, the dreaded cancer has struck one of my wife's family members, and let's just say it's terminal. Both Alan and I had some ideas of, you know, and we had a contact where we could get some help, some alternative help. But and the family of the lady in question, they were all for it as well. However, unfortunately, the lady herself decided that she'd had a good innings and that she was ready for the end. And unfortunately, everyone kind of thought that it just came up upon her. Because there was no pain, no nothing. She was just kind of living her life. She had a routine and she stuck to that routine on a daily basis. She never complained of pain. It was just a different issue that brought her into hospital for a checkup, and they diagnosed it there after a biopsy and a scan, a scan and a biopsy in that order. But up to that point, she'd never actually been sick, and I always assumed in my naivety that when you had cancer, that you would know you had cancer because you would be in pain, probably constant daily pain. But seemingly you can actually have it and it can go through you and there is no pain. And I have to say that was a shock to all my wife's family this week. And the lady herself who is suffering, she just kind of said, yeah, I've had a good life and I'm ready to go. So she's obviously, she's made peace, and, you know, there's nothing that we can really do. But, obviously the minute we heard this, Alan was on the case straight away. Fair dues to Alan. He was on the case, and say an alternative, source of help was located. But unfortunately, we won't be going down that road. But I just say we kind of spoke about cancer many times on the show. We've done many shows with different people in relation to cancer, and we've heard about all the different cures and people who have cured themselves. And up to this point, it's all been talk. I've never really had hands-on experience with anyone close to me with cancer. So this is this is a first for me, and I just want to say it hasn't been a pleasant week. My wife and her family have been kind of torn between pillar and post, and it's kind of rocked their world. So again, I just want to say, I generally. We speak about it kind of real off the cuff, and we heard this and we've heard that, but we've never really had. Well, I've never really had hands-on. I know Alan has. I've never really had any hands-on experience. So this is kind of, as I say, it's a force for me. Well, there we go. That's where my week has been.
You've been busy.
Well, yeah. How's yours?
Yeah, well, not too bad. Just something that I came across. There's a program on True TV called Psychic Detective, and I like watching it as a spiritual person. And I'm into that. It's interesting how the psychics help the police to solve cases, which is, very good, which is very helpful. But on one of these programs I was watching, it just so happened that they arrested a guy that they suspected was involved in a petrol scam and a murder. They were in the interrogation room, and the guy wasn't giving up any information at all until the detectives noticed that he was wearing a Masonic ring. And they said to him that as the detective said, as he's wearing a ring and they're all Masonic brothers, inverted commas, then he must tell the truth. So straight away after the detective said that, he starts telling them the information that he knew, right?
Yeah.
Now, that kind of concerns me, that we're all brothers and you're wearing a Masonic ring and nudge, nudge, wink, wink and raise the leg and show the left nipple and all that kind of stuff. And obviously the one thing you probably didn't say on camera, and they wouldn't have said, and I'm just kind of speculating here because obviously I wasn't in the room, but maybe the two detectives might have said to him, listen, now the cameras are gone and you gave us that information, as you're one of the brothers, we'll make sure that you'll get an easy sentence or get let off with a little fine or something like that. And that was a big help. So, yeah, we've mentioned the Masons before and the old nudge, 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 wink, wink kind of thing, but there you go. We'll only speculate because obviously nothing like that was said on the show, but I'm only kind of guessing. Anyway, so that was it. That's just the one thing I come across. Just being a busy week doing other bits and pieces. So we're going to bring a guest on now. Now, Ken Smallen is with the Irish Democratic Party. Ken is a retired Gardaí, and he understands what the Guards are going through. A lot of Guards are going through hard times. I know there's a lot of issues with the Irish water, and a lot of people have certain, approaches to the Gardaí and things like that. And we can't tar them all with the same brush. There are Guards out there who have empathy and understand and are being attacked by the system themselves and can't afford to probably buy food. We know there's a Guard in the hub who was thinking of committing suicide. And some guards sleep in the station because he can't afford the petrol to drive home. So, we can't tar them all with the same brush. And I'm sure Ken will kind of talk to us about that as well. So let's bring Ken on and find out what's been going on. Good evening, Ken. How are you?
Hello, Alan. How are you doing?
Listen, thanks a lot for coming on. We met up briefly down in Collection Hotel when you did the talk down there. And it was a good talk. I have to say, there's good information being passed around. We will get into that during the interview. But before we do that, let people know who Ken Smallen is and the IDP party, how that came about and what your aims are.
Well, Alan, to briefly say what the Irish Democratic Party is about, it's about changing the system, because we know that the current system that we have of representative democracy, first of all, it's outdated and it's completely unfit for purpose. It's also a very corruptible system, as we all know and have experienced over the last few years especially. But what we actually do, we have a 15-point strategy for change, and the very first one is the introduction and implementation of participatory democracy into Irish politics, where the elected official must consult with his or her electorate before decisions are made and vote in accordance with their wishes. And this will allow the full participation of people in the legislative and decision-making process and eliminates the undemocratic whip system. If the elected official does not abide by the wishes of the electorate, he or she can be recalled or sacked. Like, this ensures full accountability at all times and guards against false or misleading pre-election promises. Participatory democracy will also enable citizens to initiate a referendum with a predetermined number of signatures. That is basically what the Irish Democratic Party is about. That is what we're advocating, a complete change in the system. Now, we do have 15 full points there, and probably a 16th one we're actually discussing as well in connection with the media, because we know that the media are completely compromised by their connections to the financial system, but to the government in particular. And we're not hearing the truth, except for people like yourselves. That's why we need people like yourself to actually tell exactly what is happening out there, rather than listening to government spin and propaganda.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is why we try and get people on, like yourself, on the show to give you the airtime, to tell us the truth, tell us what you're seeing on the streets and what's going on, and to have your say, because the mainstream media, we all know, is compromised, and it's controlled and manipulated, and it's pure propaganda. And when people like yourself and the other parties and independent TDs go on, you're basically pulled apart by it could be a radio host or a TV host, and because they're being controlled and manipulated and probably have an earpiece in their head, and the old production assistant or director or manager is telling them what to say and how to say it. And this is why what we try and do is get people on like yourself and give you the platform to do that, because people need to know what's going on. Now, I know, the world's a big place, but in Ireland especially, what's going on, we are, over the last few weeks, we've been very focused on OYM about what's going on in Ireland, because I don't think people are believing it when they hear the news. And, if at all RTE and the mainstream media report something, it's probably watered down or filtered down and nothing's been said. So, and I know you're very, very hands-on, Ken. I know you've been involved and really driving around the place and helping people out and advising people and doing your bit. What are you seeing yourself? Give us an example of what you're seeing.
Well, basically, Alan, if I have to tell you that, prior to the election, I was a candidate in the general election, and I only got 3.5 weeks out there canvassing, but I did have some very good help from a good few people locally in my own constituency of Offaly, North Tipperary. Now, prior to that election, we were actually brought on to local radio station. I was actually on that particular programme along with a AAA Alliance candidate from Westmeath. Now, I could not understand why that was. He couldn't understand why that was either, because we weren't, what were we going to talk about in both of our constituencies? We had nothing really in common. We weren't fighting against each other for election. I would prefer to have been speaking with the likes of Barry Cowan and Marcella Corcoran-Kennedy, who were actually elected in Offaly and Westmeath. But you see, now, people will say that we shouldn't actually target people personally, that we should target policies and parties, but we have to look at what these people are personally talking about. We'd say for instance, Marcella Corcoran-Kennedy of Fine Gael, she was bragging about the fact that they actually put 1.7 million euros into a library in Eden Derry. That Fine Gael also put 1.4 million euros into the telescope in Burr. Now, that's wonderful and that's lovely, but people cannot live in libraries and people cannot eat in or around the telescope. That's what the problems are out there. When I was canvassing door to door, I met people in absolute desperation, people that are living on bowls of soup, one bowl of soup a day, just to keep alive. People that are living on a bowl of rice a day, just to stay alive. People that were telling me that their children were living on cornflakes, and when they could afford them. And they actually, some of them admitted that they were sending their children to bed and to school some mornings without any breakfast. But the vast majority of people will not actually admit to you what they're going through, especially if you're just knocking on their door and you're talking to them for 5 minutes. That takes a long time. And that is the reality of what's out there, not people thanking politicians for their recovery, because we know that there is no recovery for the ordinary, hard-working, decent people of Ireland. We all know that the banks are back in profit. We all know that there is a recovery for large businesses and multinational corporations. But it was people who elected these politicians, and they continue this bluff and spin, and they will still talk about we must maintain the recovery. There is no recovery for the ordinary people in this country. I attend as many of the eviction courts, as I call them. You know, the sanitized word for that is repossession courts. But there was no repossessions back in the 1800s. There were evictions, and that's what's happening now. These are eviction courts. I spent 30 years of my life on Garda Síochána. I went to courts right throughout the country, every kind of a court, from high courts to district to circuit to special criminal courts. I was at most of them. But I have never experienced as intimidating an atmosphere as I do on a regular basis in the eviction courts around this country, where people are being treated with absolute contempt, not only by registrars but by judges in these courts. They're being looked down on. They're being told that when they get an adjournment, right, you have a couple of months now to sort yourself out. Or one of a particular registrar's particular statement is, you're now on the last chance saloon. Now, these people have been trying to engage with banks. The banks are refusing to engage with these people, and it's causing absolute desperation for people. And if we actually look at this problem, it is the biggest crisis in the country, and including children. This affects well over 1 million people in this country, and that's frightening in a population of 4.5 million. And I'm not even talking to the small to medium business owners yet, or the small to medium farm owners yet. Many of those are now appearing in the courts. I couldn't believe it myself when a prominent solicitor from my own constituency actually ended up in the courts himself. That's what's happening now. I was told by a solicitor locally that some of their own people are now beginning to appear in the courts. But we'll still turn on the radio, and we'll still turn on the TV, and on the hour, every hour, on radio, national radio and local radio, we're being fed this propaganda that we're in a recovery and that Ireland is now recovering, and we're the showboys of Europe, and everybody else should follow our lead. The fact of the matter is that this government and the previous government and the one before that are prepared to leave well over 1 million people behind and just forget about them.
What about the empathy from the TDs? I mean, as you said, I find that unbelievable that they're focusing on libraries and telescopes. And the problem that I have with it, Ken, and I'm just speaking from experience because my background is the corporate world, right? I spent over 20 years working for multi-billion-dollar companies when I lived over in London. And I've said it before on the show. We are hiring these people because Jimmy is a nice guy and he's great at fixing potholes, and he fixed me pension, so I'm going to vote for him and get him in. Now, Jimmy knows nothing about business whatsoever, right? But he's good at fixing potholes. And what happens is these people get elected and they're put in government, and for two reasons. One, they don't have any business sense, so they're going to rely on the civil servants. Plus the fact that because they probably want to climb the ladder and have a successful career, they will do the bidding of the senior politicians that have been in there a long time. So they're easy to manipulate, like that new health minister who's only 29 years old. I mean, he probably wants a big career, so he'll just bend down and do anything they want. And he's just naive and obviously doesn't have any empathy from what I've been reading. Now, you know, when you go into a corporate company, you don't get the marketing manager, a person who's an expert in marketing. You don't get him in charge of accounts, and you don't get your IT guy in charge of sales, because that's not their skill set. So you would think they would get TDs. Like, one of the criteria is, do you have business experience? What area is your business experience in? And then put them in the department where their business experience is. But that doesn't happen in Irish politics. And that's why we get, I just think we have the complete shambles that we call management. And we have, Enda Kenny, he's a school teacher. What does he know about running a business and running the country? Seriously, we really have to examine how and why we put these people in there with no experience and no knowledge.
I agree totally, Alan. It's a totally corrupt system. You were talking about Simon Harris, the new Minister for Health there. The first thing that he actually said, or one of the first things that he actually spoke about when he became Minister for Health, was the standard of food in hospitals. Now, if I had to go to hospital tomorrow, the last thing I would be worried about is the standard of food. I want to, them to take care of whatever my ailment is. Now, I did end up in hospital myself for the very first time in my 55 years last January, and what I saw in the hospital in Tullamore was absolutely horrendous. Now, the staff, the nurses, the doctors, the vital support staff that's there, from the cleaners to the people that were giving us the food there. The food was, I thought the food was brilliant in there. And they all work exceptionally hard. I did not have a complaint about any of those. But what I did witness in the accident and emergency department was 37 people lying on trolleys. Not all of them had screens around them. Some of these were elderly people, and they were being given bedpans. And you can imagine what was happening there. It was a desperate situation. It reminded me of a field hospital in a war zone. And this is what's happening in our hospitals in 2016. This is not 1916. It's a desperate situation. And yet we're being told that money is being pumped into the health service. We know that 12 million euros has been taken away from the mental health side of it. But it's a disgraceful thing. You're talking about Marcella Corcoran-Kennedy, and she was made the junior minister for something or other in health. Now, it's health promotion, but what does health promotion mean? She's going to tell us not to go overboard on alcohol and tobacco and tell us what kind of proper foods to eat. We don't need this person to tell us, but yet she's being paid an extra 37,000 euros on top of her 87,000 euros for being a TD, plus her approximately 50,000 per year on expenses. That is well over 65,000 euros per year. For doing what? For bluffing her own people and for doing absolutely nothing for the people that are in desperation in her constituency. We have an elected TD for Fianna Fáil in Offaly, Barry Cowan. I have yet, and I ask many people, what has this gentleman since 2011 done for this constituency? Now, he may have done something for individual people, but for the constituency as a whole, for the people of this constituency, he has done nothing. That's 8 years. Oh, sorry, that's 5 years ago. And to be re-elected, as far as I'm concerned, if you put a Fianna Fáil or a Fine Gael badge on the ass of a donkey, that donkey would get elected, because people are going back to the Civil War politics of 93 years ago, where you either agreed with the treaty or you didn't. People will always say, well, my grandfather or my grandmother or whatever fought alongside Michael Collins, or she was a dead man, or whatever else. It just doesn't make sense anymore. We have to come forward into 2016, because the reality is, the real reality is that there's so many people in absolute desperation. Like, for instance, there are a number of people on Tuesday appearing again in the eviction courts. There's 115 families in the eviction courts on Tuesday morning in Mullingar, Dublin, Longford, Wicklow, Wexford and Dundalk. Now, that is happening every single day of the year, every single day. And we hear nothing about that on national or local media, or we don't read about it in the papers. They want to hide this from us. And that's why the media will have to play a vital role here, because, as I said before, on the hour, every hour, people are being fed propaganda. People are being hypnotized into believing that there is some sort of a recovery out there. It hasn't met them yet. It hasn't hit their door yet. But there must be a recovery, because they're saying it on the news. On the hour, every hour. And on 6-1 News on RTE, and on the 5:30 News on Radio 3. Then you go back to 9 o'clock at night. It's constantly being pumped into people's brains that there is a recovery. And we know that there is not.
Totally. I mean, we can see that in the courts. Now, let's have a chat about the eviction down in Clare, I believe. You know, the anti-eviction task force was down there. They stopped the actual they looked like paramilitaries turned up with the actual number plate covered with gaffer tape, and the Gardaí down there not willing to do anything. Did you see that video, Ken?
I did, yeah. I did, and these are hooded thugs, vigilantes, or whatever you want to call them, and it just is mind-boggling that they were allowed to carry on like that. I certainly cannot understand why they were allowed to cover up the number plates of a car. You know, that's illegal activity. Why they were allowed to drive a car with absolutely no insurance or tax details or NCT, nothing on the windscreen. It just did not make sense to me. I am going to make efforts in doing something about, to make a complaint about that, but not only to make a complaint about that, but to try and get people, in authority, in Garda Síochána, to actually tell their own people, that they're putting themselves at risk. They could lose their jobs, because it's not a guard's job to be there and help out at an eviction. It's the guard's job to prevent a breach of the peace. And to prevent a breach of the peace by anybody, not just the homeowner, by any thug that comes in there that attempts to breach the peace. That's what the guard is there for. The guard is not even supposed to be on that person's private property. You know, they're supposed to stand on the road looking in.
Yeah.
And you know that this is not happening. Now, but you talk about these hooded thugs. You know, who were they? What were they? Nobody seems to know. Now, I do know that some people, the speculation is there that there may have been some members of the defence forces there, and there may even have been guards there. But I don't think there's any proof of that. So I don't think there's any point in talking about that, you know, something that we can't prove. But I totally detest any of these people that are involved in any way with the eviction process, whether it be from the initial process servers to solicitors, to barristers, to judges, registrars. As far as I'm concerned, these people are willing to accept the 30 pieces of silver from the banks to betray their own people.
Yeah.
Now, and that is a fact.
Yeah, well, that's what's going on now. The other thing that happened in Clare is the chap who apparently was supposed to have the paperwork, which he didn't, was an ex-guard, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. He's involved with one of the sports clubs down in Limerick. Yeah, and you know, it's indefensible. It beats me, Alan, how people could actually act like that against ordinary, innocent people who are the victims of the gambling banks who were bailed out by all of us. We were all forced to bail them out, as we know, through extra taxes, charges, and levies, and job losses, and wage cuts. You know, did the government think that we had money trees growing out in the back garden, that we could actually pay the gambling bankers' debts as well as our own mortgages? You know, that's just not reality. And then you have people that are willing to accept 30 pieces of silver to betray their neighbours and their friends and people living here in Ireland. You know, that to me is it's traitorous behaviour.
It definitely, I totally agree. It definitely is. Did you see that video, Steve?
Oh, I did, yeah.
What do you think of it?
It was horrendous. It beggars belief that somebody would actually do that. And actually, that's a question I have for Ken. Ken, why would that guard, if the guard knows that he's supposed to go to the boundary and stay there to guard against breach of the peace, why was he up at the door? And are the guards in the stations, are they being told before they go to the likes of these evictions or water protests, are they being told by their superiors, if you need to get heavy-handed, it's okay? Or are they taking it on their own bat just to get heavy-handed?
Stephen, I am almost convinced that they're under pressure from their superiors to actually act like this. It's wrong of the Garda Representative Association not to actually ensure that their own members know what they're supposed to be doing, know what their duty is at these vile places. It defeats me as to why this is happening, and it does need to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with very quickly. And I do intend to try and, because, look, many people around the country know what I'm doing, that I'm actually heavily involved in. It's something that I never really wanted to, I never even thought about being involved in, but it was only from experience that I saw how serious this problem is out there. And, most people know that I'm involved in trying to stop people from losing their homes and encouraging people to make sure they fight for their homes. And I will now have to, I will take it on myself to make that approach to the Garda authorities and remind them of what they're actually getting involved in. That would involve the GRA and possibly the Commissioner herself. It's wrong what's happening. I can't defend it. I won't defend it. I will not defend wrongdoing by anybody, no matter who they are, wearing a uniform or not.
But if you go to the likes of the GRA, Ken, do you reckon they'll take you seriously? I mean, the fact that you're an ex-Gardaí, well, they're just going to go, she know what it's like yourself, and they'll just kind of dismiss you, would they?
No, you see, as I said before, we all, in order to get this story, the real truth out there, we do need the help of the national and local media. Now, I have managed to get onto RTE, the Clareburn Live program, a couple of times, and onto RTE as well, and TV3, and local radio as well. And I will start publicising this thing. I will tell people basically what the answer I got. Why would I hide the truth from people? I will tell people exactly what I asked of the head of the GRA and the Commissioner, and I will not hide it. I will simply tell people, and I think that alone will put pressure on these people to look again at what they're actually doing. I was proud of the job that I did. I was proud of the people that I worked with. I can say that in my 30 years, let's say I got to know personally 1,000 men and women in on Garda Síochána. And I can honestly say to you that I could not count on two hands, the amount of wrong ones that were there. No matter what job you were in, you're always going to get people that are not exactly honest or whatever they're supposed to be. But I can honestly say that the vast, vast, vast majority of those people were simply doing a job, did it well, and were honest, decent people. Mm. But you are always going to get the odd rogue here and there, and that's just a natural thing in any job.
Yeah, I think they need to be weeded out. One of the things, Ken, which I don't know whether you're aware of this, Ken, but this is a subject that we've talked about on the radio show on numerous occasions, and we've actually had experts. We've had numerous experts on the show, from doctors to scientists to physicists, on the show here talking about it, okay? And this is all, we have all this information, actually to a level that we could go in the court of law with this and have an expert witness actually go up on the stand and verify that this information is correct. Now, we know the Tetra system. The Gardaí use a radio system called Tetra, okay? Now, that was an 18-year experiment, okay?
Medical experiment.
That was never approved in Ireland. And the police force, the UK police force, have had Tetra before the Irish Gardaí. And the UK police force are coming down with tumours and cancers because of the frequency that the radio works at. Now, Barry Trower, who's a physicist and scientist, and he's an expert witness and has stood as an expert witness with this technology, has had in 1 week 7 UK police officers in his house concerned about the Tetra radio system. And I myself, I have a relative who is a member of the Gardaí, and he told me of a story that a female guard, she was planning to get married, and I think it was 2 months away, she was planning to get married, and they found a tumour on her chest. And where was the tumour? Exactly where the Tetra radio was. Okay, Now, we've already contacted the GRA, and we've sent all the relevant information to the GRA to warn them about this. And we've all the reports and all the scientific information and all the interviews of the experts that we've done. And the GRA and the politicians are refusing to accept it. They're just ignoring it. So not only are the guards being treated really bad by the politicians and their seniors, but they're being used as guinea pigs with this technology. Plus the frequency creates violence. Okay? It heightens the violence level in the Gardaí, and this is again proven fact and science. So the Gardaí are going around using technology which they might be planning to grow old and see their kids grow old and get married and have kids or retire and have a pension. But I can tell you now there's going to be a good percentage of the Gardaí are going to be dying because they'll have tumours and cancers from the technology because it was never approved.
And that's not just from carrying the radios. That's anyone living in, I think it's something that could be a mile of the base station on the Garda station. And all the Garda, that's emitting Tetra 24/7.
Yeah, all the Garda police stations have Tetra antennas, and they're pumping that out. So if you look at Kells, there's a massive Tetra antenna over the police station, and the guards are walking in and out. So now, to prove this point, if you were to ask the Garda station to show us your insurance, your public liability insurance, that states that they're covered for radio radiation, it won't be covered. It won't be on it.
Yeah, well, I agree. These antennas, who knows what's on them? Who knows what's coming from them?
But it's not just the antennas, Ken. It's the Gardaí who wear the Tetra radio on their chest.
I agree. But it's, the health and safety. For a long time, the drivers of patrol cars were not actually covered by insurance. No, I mean those for years and years. Drivers of patrol cars were not covered by insurance in those cars. And that situation was allowed to continue for years. Mm. And as far as I know, as far as I'm aware, that has been corrected only in the last 2 or 3 years. So it was a desperate situation. Guards are being used as guinea pigs. You see guards being put on duty there at these water protests. I have no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that it's a divide and conquer campaign. The government will want, and you probably could say the same about governments worldwide, they want to divide the people from the local police force. They want to create enemies there. It's a divide and conquer campaign. It's the same as the HSE when the emergency department personnel were talking about going on strike. How did they cure that? They made a few managerial positions. That divided those workers as well. But it didn't do anything for the patients that were there. As we can see, there's no improvement there. This is all a divide and conquer campaign by the government. And it's a well worked out one. It has been worked on for a hell of a long time, 100 years. So they're experts at how to divide people.
Yeah.
And how, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, this is what's going to happen. I mean, we are trying to educate and get the word out there regarding the dangers of Tetra because they are being used as guinea pigs. But the trouble is, and I heard a statement which is made, which I think is quite relevant, is the guards don't respect their own ignorance. And that's the problem. Yeah, well, you see, guards are like everybody else too. They will listen to the propaganda and they will believe, like everybody else, what they hear and what they're told. Most people are not prepared to stand up and question what's actually happening, the reality of what's happening. We talk about recording equipment in Garda stations. Those things were there for years. Nobody questioned them. They just took it for granted that they were there. Now, even though we know that recording phone calls was illegal, what kind of radiation was coming from that equipment? What equipment was there? What equipment is still there? Mm. Where are the medical reports? Where's medical health and safety reports on any of those things? They're not there. They don't exist. And you see, we're talking about the GRA, but I'm not just talking about the GRA, the Garda Representatives Association, the Garda Union. I'm talking about every union in the country. The top union officials in every section of our community are being paid vast sums of money. So do you think that they're actually going to represent the ordinary lowly worker as far as they see, or are they going to do as they are asked in order to keep their vast incomes and huge pension pots? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's the game. It's the 1% again, and they don't want to upset the status quo because they like things the way they are. They're in control and they're running the shop, and they don't want any change to the system. And they'll do, they'll be kind of megalomaniacs and psychopaths and that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing. Now, this kind of Nuremberg excuse as well, which we've talked about on the radio, is that if a senior guard tells a junior guard to do something that goes against the law of Ireland, then that junior guard is liable to be sued.
Yeah, I agree with you, but, I was actually on the GRA committee myself, and I ended up trying to defend young and older members of the force against threats of being transferred, for simple things, for questioning authority and for questioning what was happening. And I know that there's a huge threat on people because they can simply use an excuse on a young married father or a married mother, and they don't have to be that young either. That there's a vacancy in Donegal and they need somebody in Donegal, and you have no real comeback on that. You can appeal your transfer, but you won't win it. You will actually end up in Donegal as punishment, and that is the threat that's on people. People being afraid that they simply will not be able to survive from day to day. You spoke about guards actually living in cars. I saw that myself. Guards not being able to afford to go home at night time, especially if they were finished at 10 o'clock at night and working at 6 o'clock the following morning. They couldn't go home, especially if it was 10, 15 miles away or 20 miles away or whatever that they were living. They simply had to sleep in their own cars. And that's still happening. I have worked with members of a Garda Síochána who could not afford to have a cup of coffee during the daytime. They couldn't afford to eat. I know that there are many, many guards that are actually going through the eviction process in the courts as well. These people are under enormous pressure. It's not only shame, it's embarrassment, it's feelings of letting themselves down, letting their families down, but feelings that they have let their colleagues down by going into debt and being made to feel that it's their own fault. Guards are no different than anybody else that's out there. And I hear these stories on a regular basis. Look, Alan, I get about 3 or 4 phone calls every single day. Now, I have to say, thankfully, I did not get one phone call today, which I'm wondering if there's something wrong with my phone or something. But I didn't get one phone call today. But every other day, I get at least 3 or 4 phone calls from new people that are actually in mortgage distress. Now, I don't proclaim to be any expert on how people should actually deal with that problem. But the one thing that I do is I recommend to them that they contact the Hub Ireland in Dublin. And I always recommend, because these are a fantastic group of volunteers. Now, I recommend it to guards to contact them as well. And I do know that many guards have contacted the Hub. And the Hub helps people for free. They operate on donations only. And they help people with their court paperwork. They're fantastic people. And the problem is that, 90% of the population out there doesn't know that the Hub exists. Now, there are Hub offices in Galway and in Mullingar and in Wexford and in different areas of the country as well. It's time that we got that information out. Tell people that there is help out there for them, because so many people are burying their heads in the sand. Alan, last week I spoke to a gentleman after one of the courts, and I follow people out of the courts, and I asked them are they okay, are they getting help anywhere? And most of them say no, that they say they're talking to MABs, or they're getting help from, they've been advised to go to these personal insolvency practitioners. But MABs will tell people what brand of cheap cornflakes to eat. They'll tell them what television channels they should be watching. MABs will not tell them how your future is going to be better. Yeah. They'll tell them how you can pay pay the gambling bank's debts, but they're not going to tell them how they can survive into the future. They will basically tell these people, you must live on cornflakes now for the rest of your life. You go to a personal insolvency practitioner, and I've seen these people in the courts, and they're nothing better, as far as I'm concerned, than ambulance chasers. They're looking for money. They will look for between 1,000 and 5,000 euros for dealing with people, and there's no definite resolution at the end of that process. Whereas the hub will not do that. We all know that the banks, some of the documentation, a lot of the documentation with the banks was extremely flawed. And that's where the banks should be fought. The banks were so anxious to throw out money to people during the so-called Celtic period time that they didn't have enough time. They didn't wait enough to actually fill out their own documents properly. Many people were actually signed their own mortgages in their own homes, especially if they were remortgaging or whatever, which people were advised to do because you were advised that if you did not get on the bandwagon, you were going to lose out. The ordinary 3-bedroom house in Ireland, we were told, was going to be worth probably €1 million in a couple of years' time. And if you did not invest, well, then you were going to be left behind.
I know. I totally agree. I was on that. I was in around 2006 when I moved back, and this was what I wasn't aware of, things that was going on regarding the economy and stuff like that. And we were hearing, I believed the propaganda and heard the government say the same thing. And my house now, what the price we paid for it, and the value of my house is probably less than half now.
Yeah, look, I got my own house valued. That was one of the mistakes that I made. But then again, it wasn't really a mistake. Everybody could look back and say that. But back in early 2008, I think it was, my own home was valued at, I said, I was told by an auctioneer, yeah, you'll get 380, but look, you could get 400,000 for it. I know that my own home is probably worth about 120,000, that's some difference.
Yeah.
And if I look back and say, God, if I sold it then, I wouldn't have found myself in this problem. But I didn't, and like thousands of other people, we didn't. We accepted the likes of what Bertie Ahern was telling us. After that famous YouTube clip that's out there, and it's there for everybody to see, after that union meeting where Bertie Ahern actually said that anybody that spoke about a downturn should go away and commit suicide. And that was after a financial or an economist, Morgan Kelly, actually warned of a downturn. But Bertie Ahern said that people like him and people that spoke about a downturn should go away and commit suicide. We all listened to our politicians. We trusted these people foolishly. We trusted bank managers. We trusted so-called financial experts. But we all know now that they led us all down the garden path.
Yeah. Now, the trouble is, have enough people in Ireland woken up to what's going on? I mean, we did have a chap on our show a long time ago, a couple of years ago, called Bob Chapman. He's passed away now. But when he was on our show, he was in the military, and he was in intelligence, and he spoke about 6 languages, and he got into finance after that, and counterintelligence, that's what he was into. And we said to Bob, when will people wake up? And he said, when they can't put food on the table for their families. And he said, by then it might be just too late. And what you said earlier, Ken, is exactly what's happening. People are struggling to put food on the table for their kids and for themselves.
You see, I can look up from my own house here. I'm living on a hill here, so I can see a lot of houses, housing estates from the window here I'm looking out of them. And I know that there is 1 out of every 4 of those homes is in financial difficulties, mortgage difficulties, and it could be 1 out of 3. But most of those people will not admit to that. They just will not admit to that. They may know themselves that they're in this problem, but they're not going to admit that to their own families, to their neighbours, to their friends. And I see the evidence of that in these courts every single week. That gentleman I was talking about, his own wife doesn't know that they're going through this situation. He's going to wait till sometime during the summer to actually tell her, because he got an adjournment until September. And you can imagine the pressure that's putting the likes of that man on, and so many others, because I spoke to another woman recently as well, after her case was heard, and she got an adjournment, but her family does know, and her father and the rest of her family have given up on her. They don't talk to her anymore, because she has let the family down in their eyes, and she was not able to repay her debts, as they said to her. Like, that is what's causing people to keep this very secret. And so it's the excuse that the government need to. The government love this. They love how secretive the people are being about this, because If people are not talking about the problem, well, then the problem doesn't exist, and they don't really have to address the problem properly.
Yeah.
You know, I spoke to Barry Cowan recently. I invited Barry Cowan to those 2 meetings in Portlaoise, and he didn't bother even replying, never mind turning up there. Now, some TDs did turn up, as you know yourself, Alan, to both of those meetings. And we were invited then to address a number of the TDs in Leinster House a couple of weeks ago. And we did that, and thankfully there was about 25 TDs and senators came in to listen to what we had to say. And some of those people were actually shocked by what the truth of what we were telling them. They couldn't believe that this was happening. Now, I have to say that there was 2 or 3 of them actually realised that this problem was there. But Barry Cowan himself actually sent me an email saying that, if I wanted to speak to him, I should make an appointment to see him in his constituency office. I immediately did that. I rang his constituency office and asked to see Barry Cowan. And they asked me my name. I said I was Ken Smallen. So they initially told me I wouldn't be able to see him for about 10 days, but I got a phone call back 20 minutes later to tell me I could see him in 3 days. So I went in to see Barry Cowan, and he spoke about this mortgage to rent scheme, and this is what he's going to do. And I just said to him that this is going back to the 1800s because, we're back to the landlords. It's part of the biggest transfer of wealth in world history where, your wealth, your home.
It's an asset grab. Yeah, but we know with the vulture funds. I was in the meeting down in Kells, Ken, and now I know Father Verity, I think his name is, who does the homeless stuff. Fair play, he does an awful lot of great. He does an awful lot of great work there. But there was 2 councillors in the room as well, and this is what they were saying. They were saying, yeah, okay, the mortgage to rent, that's a good scheme. And I stood up. There's about 50 people in the room, and I said, you must be joking. If you really think that's the solution, you've no concept of what's going on. And I asked everybody in the room, I said, how many people in this room understand fractional reserve banking? And about 3 people put their hands up. And I said, that's the problem. I said, your ignorance, they're playing to your ignorance. The politicians and the banks are getting away with blue murder because you don't understand how the system works. And if you think the mortgage to rent scheme is a solution, then you just don't have a clue. And and they just looked, they have this kind of glazed look on their face if to say, what's this guy talking about?
But you see, Alan, people are in so much fear of losing their homes and not being able to put a roof over not only their own heads, but the wife's head or the partner's head and children's heads as well, that they will readily accept these mortgage to rent deals because then they will feel secure that they will have a roof over their heads. They don't realize that, they have now transferred their wealth, their home, over to some of the vulture funds, and they will have to pay rent for the rest of their lives. We're going back to the 1800s when Irish people were being made to pay, rents to vastly wealthy landlords. Yeah. And that is exactly what this is happening right now. It is part of the biggest transfer of wealth in world history, and it's happening right on our doorstep and our own elected politicians. And some of them are the newly so-called independent politicians. They are complicit in all of this because they are obviously compromised by their connections to the banks, just the same way as registrars and judges are compromised by their connections, whether they actually have shares in these banks or whether they have huge debts. I would imagine that most of these people have massive debts with the banks, so they must play ball with the banks and target the little people out there that will keep the wolf away from their own doors.
Yeah, I totally agree. And here's the problem. The councillors that were in that room in the meeting, they're sitting there going, well, I'm a councillor, and obviously they want to be a TD or get into government. And they don't know the problem. They don't understand the problem because they don't understand how the system works. So they're just repeating what they're being told, probably by their seniors, regarding the mortgage to rent, and they don't have a clue. And this is the trouble. It's dumb and dumber. It's the blind leading the blind, and we're voting. People are voting and putting these people in government, and they don't have a clue how the system works. It's just unbelievable. We have a couple of questions for you, Ken. Go ahead.
Sorry?
We have a couple of questions for you, but go ahead if you want to finish what you're saying.
Yeah, no, so we just have to look at some of the promises that these newly elected TDs made before the election. No, they have already backtracked on those. We look at the promises that Fianna Fáil made, that they weren't going to back Fianna Fáil or a Fine Gael-led government, that they were fully in favour of the getting rid of Irish water and the water charges. We know what they've done there. They've kicked it down the road for a few months. No, they have totally broken every promise they've made. I spoke one of those Fianna Fáil TDs. I said on RTE television, on the Claire Byrne Live programme, that TDs do not realise what's happening to families in these eviction courts. Now, this Fianna Fáil TD actually said, I disagree with Ken totally, because I have people calling into my constituency office every single day that are in mortgage distress. There is absolutely no comparison between people going into a constituency office, sitting down and talking to their TD. You compare that to somebody that's actually sitting in the actual eviction court. It's a complete difference. Those people are in absolute terror. Last week, and again, it was last week, and this is happening every week, and I see it every single week. Last week, there's one gentleman who actually turns up in court to support people there. And I think it's a fantastic thing for people to do, just to turn up to support, let people know they're on their side. But one gentleman who regularly appears and has been doing so for 3 years, his own case was called last week. And that man himself, having such experience of going into those courts, he was in absolute terror himself. He had to take a break at least 3 times to go to the bathroom. He wasn't only getting sick, if you understand what I mean. You know, his whole body was shutting down because of the terror that he was feeling. He was physically shaking. And that is the situation that's happening in the courts. TDs will never see this in their own constituency offices. Yeah. If they had bothered to go into the eviction courts, they would be absolutely shocked at what they actually see there and how the ordinary Irish people, hard-working, decent people, are being treated by these judges and registrars. And the government is completely complicit in all of this. You know, we know that there was a Dáil housing committee there. You know, which of these people have actually gone to the eviction courts on a regular basis? I've been told that Kathleen Funchion has gone to some of these eviction courts. I don't know whether that's true or not. I only heard it. Somebody said it during the week. She's on she was on it. Now, it finished up its deliberations last Thursday. Now, we were trying, myself and the Hub were trying to get an invitation to make not only a written, but most importantly, an oral submission to this committee. These people couldn't care less. Now, I asked Barry Cowan, would he do that? He's been a false spokesperson on housing. He was on that Dáil committee on housing and homelessness. He couldn't be bothered bringing us in there because he knew well we'd tell the truth, and they wouldn't have any answer for it. You know, it makes me mad to think that we have elected politicians there who will always, and I mean always, put the interests of banks, large business, and multinational corporations before the interests and welfare of the people who elected them to their lofty and vastly overpaid positions.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and that's what's happening. But the problem is, it's ignorance of the system. They don't know how it works. But listen, we have a few questions we want to from our listeners, so we're going to pass you off to Steve, and Steve is going to call them out there.
Yeah, Ken, the first question off the bat anyway is, you know, you may have heard a couple of weeks ago there was a video of Ben Gilroy released a video, and he said he's stepping away from the whole political life because in the last election he went around knocking on doors, he walked the walk, he talked the talk, but he just found that the people, when it came excuse me, to putting their mark on the ballot paper, they kind of just followed the same old, you know, as Alan said, the local politician who fixed the pothole down the road. But they seem to be afraid to vote for someone who would actually have a good chance of making change. I mean, anyone who knows, but I think everyone must know Ben Gilroy at this stage, but he's bowing out of politics. He said he's going to continue on to do what he does best, and that is help people on a one-to-one basis. And I'm just wondering, when you were out knocking on doors and then it came to election time, and now at this moment in time, a couple of months after the election, how do you feel? Are you do you reckon you have made a difference, or do you reckon that the people are just too institutionalized with the whole system that they'll just keep voting for the same old Gombians?
Well, you see, first of all, Steve, I'll answer that in two different parts. First of all, Ben Gilroy. I know Ben personally, and I've always found Ben to be a very, very decent man. And he always has the people's interests before anything else. And I hope that his decision is not going to be a permanent one. I hope that he will change his mind. But I don't blame him in any way for taking a break from it, because it can actually affect you, not only physically, but it can affect you mentally once, if you think that you're actually not really you're not getting through to the electorate out there. But I think it's a slow process, and I think it's important for people to actually see you out on the streets defending the rights of people. Now, not just in mortgage distress, but in every aspect of life. Yeah. People are, I had 3.5 weeks canvassing before the election. I knocked on doors, and the people with me, and I stayed with those people. We went to the same housing estates, and I was always there. If somebody wanted to speak to me, well, I was only 3 or 4 doors away. I believe fully in speaking to people, talking to people. I do not believe in throwing leaflets into letterboxes, because most people will just either tear them up, throw them in the bin, or throw them in the fire. So I believe in talking to people. Now, the system that we have, participatory democracy, it's completely new to people. It's about people participating in the decision-making process. But you need to explain that to people. And I found I got a very good reception. For my first time out going for any kind of an election, I was told by a lady that actually worked with the Labour Party for many years in Ireland, and actually worked with the Labour Party in the UK in the 1960s, that I should normally expect roughly 450 votes. Now, I got 999 votes. I was one away from the 1,000. But, I was more than pleased with that, because it meant that I got through to people. And I know that I only got to knock on maybe 15% of the doors in Offaly and North Tipperary. And I certainly do intend to get out very shortly, actually, knocking on doors again. I have a good team of people around me, and I am more than thankful to them for that. They're actually a very, very good team of people that are around me, and they understand the system very, very well, because they hear me talking about it all of the time. And but people need to be told what real change is and how it can benefit them. And they also need to be told about this present system that we have, because, we have to understand that this present system that we have was created at a time when it was deemed that the ordinary person was not intelligent enough to make decisions for themselves and their families. So therefore, so-called people of higher standing were elected to make decisions on their behalf. And it's unbelievable to think that 150 or 200 years later, we still use that system, where party leadership can actually dictate to their TDs, their own TDs, what decisions to make, no matter what their conscience is, their own personal conscience. There should be no whip system. People, the majority of people, should be able to tell the elected politicians, this is the decision we want you to make on our behalf. But, I'm not disappointed. I was not disappointed at all. I know it's a very hard slog, and it would really get you down sometimes too, if you allowed it to. But thankfully, I will not allow it to get me down. I spend 18 hours every single day answering people, phone calls, emails, Facebook messages, and getting the message out there, because I know I have to. And I think that with time, we can make a huge, big difference. And that's why I hope that Ben Gilroy will take a rest from this for a while, and then we'll come back even stronger.
Yeah, let's hope he does, because, with what Ben was doing, he was making a difference. And with what you're doing as well, you're making a big bloody difference too. And a lot of people as well. But it's unfortunate that when the electorate, when people go around knocking on the doors and canvassing, and you're correct in what you said about leaflets through doors. I live in a small village in Westmeath, and I think we actually had one candidate knock at the door. That was it. The rest were all just kind of leaflets fired in, and for good bloody reason too, because I think half them knew that some of the people would give them a hard time on the door. Some of the people would just kind of go, yeah, I'll vote for you, yeah, you know, and just plumage them. But I think they would have got a hard time from some people, and obviously they didn't want that. They just want to, you know, get the votes and get elected and not have to deal with the little people. But I mean, Ben has done some Trojan work, and unfortunately, we know Ben as well. We know him quite well. We've seen a lot of his updates, a lot of the things that he's involved in. But on a day-to-day basis, like me, I'm just an ordinary Joe, and I would often talk about Ben's little victories, you know, the little victories that he would have in work, and people they're not interested. And I find it very strange that when you're talking about something that affects everyone in the country, the likes of the evictions, the likes of, you know, people coming to your door and trying to evict you from your home, drag you out and pull all your belongings and your kids and everything. They're not interested. Yeah. And you tell people about Ben Gilroy, and I even said to them, coming up to the election time, will you have a look at just your ballot paper? Said, and if there's anyone on it from DDI, Direct Democracy Ireland, I told them what DDI was about and, you know, what kind of changes that they wanted to make, and they wanted to kind of improve the whole system, if you like. And people just kind of says, one woman actually looked at me and she just said to me, Ken, well, we're kind of a Fine Gael household. We've always kind of, my father was Fine Gael and my grandfather was Fine Gael, so I'll probably just vote for whoever Fine Gael is. I said, Jesus Christ. I said, are you serious? I said, have you no interest in what's going on in the country? I said, it's not up to the politicians. They won't make the change. I said, it's up to you. You will make the change, because you have to get people in there who are on our side. And I said, the people who are in there at the moment and coming around throwing leaflets in doors, they're only interested in feathering their own nest. They're not really interested in making change for you or I. And I have to say, when the whole election process was over, when everything was done and dusted, I went to a few people and I said, no, you don't have to tell me if you don't want it, but I said, was there anyone from DDI on your ballot paper? And one of the women said, yeah, there was, but I didn't like the look of him, so I didn't vote for him. I says, what? Are you serious? She says, yeah, I have to like the look of them, you know. If they look honest, I'll vote for them. And I just thought, we're screwed. Yeah. We're screwed.
That's the gun-bean attitude.
It is.
Now,
it is, but that's why I said that you have to be seen out in your own locality, actually, you know, working for people and bringing the attention to what's actually wrong in your own locality, and telling people what's going on in your own locality. People have to get to know you before they'll get to trust you. You know, it's all about trust. Yeah. And it's all about the fact that there was only 63-64% of people actually voted in the last election. You know, if we had an 80, you know, or an 82 or 3% turnout, things would have been very different. You know, so many people just think that, there's no point in me voting because it's going to make no difference. We have to educate people into actually thinking, I can make a difference. And if we have a high turnout, then we're going to have a huge difference. You know, things can change.
Well, people have to make the effort. Now, I will say, because I'm just watching the time as well that we have, Ken, and there's a couple of things we need to speak to you about. There is a difference. I mean, you have the DDI party and your IDP and your participatory democracy and their direct democracy, but the principles are the same. Giving people back the power, where you can actually call a referendum and you can have recall as well. So, although it's a different name, many people have asked, you know, what is the difference between participatory democracy and direct democracy? Direct democracy basically works on the principle of people being allowed to call referendums with a predetermined number of signatures. Whereas participatory democracy actually encompasses that too. But what participatory democracy does, it allows people to get involved from the very beginning at the decision-making process. It's not just calling referendums to correct bad laws. It's allowing people into the decision-making process when those laws are being actually made. That's the difference. Okay, well that's brilliant. Now tell us about a couple of weeks ago. You were down in the Collection Hotel. I was down there. We met up and had a quick chat. And it was I thought it was a good meeting. I think a lot of people knew what the problem was, but there was very few people giving the solution as to what we can do. And I know a few people left. They felt pumped and they felt that something had to be done. And I think we can all agree on that. And it's just, we need everybody to kind of put their own agendas aside and have a coming together of all the groups. And, you know, because, again, that's a plan, divide everybody so that doesn't happen. Now, I know that you're going to have another meeting and the date has been moved around. So give us your take on how that meeting went and what the plan is for the future meeting.
Well, first of all, the next meeting is on Saturday, the 24th of June at 1:30 p.m. in the Collection Hotel in Portlaoise. Now, it's a public meeting open to everybody. It's not an Irish Democratic Party meeting. It's not a Ken Smallen meeting. It's not, even though I will be inviting all of the PDs, I will invite all of the 60 senators there as well. But it is a meeting for the hub and every other group that's out there that's working against eviction, the eviction process. And that's what it's about. You see, the reason we had to change the initial date was the 11th of June. But there was no point in us having it on that date simply because the report from the Dáil Committee on Housing and Homelessness is due out on the 17th of June. So we want to see what they're going to come out with on that report before we actually meet in Portlaoise. Now, the date then was transferred to the 19th. But then somebody else, and a few people pointed out that the 19th is actually Father's Day. Now, I personally would have been of the opinion that, yes, a lot of fathers are taking their own lives, and it probably would have been a good day. But I have to actually accept what the majority of people say to me, and because this is not my decision. It's not about me. This is about people in desperation out there. So people said that, a lot of people want to stay at homes with their fathers and with their families that day. So we then moved it to the following Saturday, the 24th. In June, or the 24th of June at 1:30 p.m. in the Collection Hotel. Now, the first two meetings were actually very good. Maybe the first one got a little bit lost because people, naturally enough, some people were angry and they spoke out about, they made their feelings well known. Now, it did give the politicians an escape route without saying what their own feelings on this situation were. And what they would actually do about them. But the second meeting was better. There wasn't that many interruptions. We all know that most people that will attend that are either in trouble themselves or they're aware of this problem and they want to see solutions to this problem coming forth. Now, we do have a plan. We have to look at, we said that the politicians had 6 weeks between the last meeting and the next meeting. It so happens now they have 8 weeks. We do have a plan, and we're working on a plan as to, what do we do if these politicians simply refuse to play ball and they allow the eviction process to continue? Because that's what we have to get. We have to get a moratorium on the eviction process in the courts stopped, because that's what's causing the damage. It's not the evictions themselves as such, it's the actually eviction process, because banks are well aware that after the 6th or 7th appearance in the courts, an awful lot of people simply give up because they can't take this pressure anymore. So we have to have a plan what we're going to do between if politicians actually refuse to do anything real about this problem. And when I say real, we must have a fair and sustainable solution for every homeowner in the country, not just people in mortgage distress. We must have a fair and sustainable solution for every small to medium business owner and small to medium farm owner in the country as well, because too many people are taking their own lives. The plan is, what do we do then? Now, we can all say, yes, we'll arrange marches to the Dáil and we'll protest outside banks. A march to the Dáil, whether it be on a Wednesday or on a Friday, is one day, and the politicians can easily forget about that then. That's done. They can forget about it. We have to come up with a plan that's ongoing and that is actually going to affect the politicians, and it's going to affect the banks. Now, we are working on something like that. We do have a fairly solid thing in mind, and we will be looking for people, naturally enough, people to get involved. But it's not about shouting and roaring your heads off. It's about talking. That's all it's about. But it's a very good plan as far as I can see, and we'll know more about that in the next week or so.
Okay, We're going to do our best to try and get down to that, because it was interesting last time. Now I'm going to go over to Steve. Steve still has a few questions there that he wants to go through with you. So, Steve.
Yeah, we had a comment a comment/question in from Vin on People's Internet Radio, Ken, and Vin says, does Ken realise the problem with, I'm guessing with the whole thing that's going on today, is usury in the money system, obviously paying back interest? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, paying back interest, insofar as is he talking about the fact that once cases go to court and that they're adjourned and the interest rates keep going up, or
the issue is that there is a financial system out there called the mathematically perfected economy, and the problem why we have this massive financial Ponzi scheme going is because of the interest, because the interest never existed. Okay? Yeah. And the interest is causing the problem. The interest is the usury. You see, again, it goes back to understanding how the system works. And if we're dealing with TDs and counsellors who have no concept of the fractional reserve system, then how can they solve the problem?
Yeah, we know that it was created out of thin air. It didn't exist in the first place. No, what I see as the biggest problem in relation to, you see, people, one problem that's not spoken about at all is that for anyone that's in mortgage distress, or for anyone that's being close to it being in mortgage distress, their credit rating is ruined. They cannot go to their local credit union and even look for €100 of a loan. They won't get it. So therefore, those people's lives for the rest of their lives, if this situation is not addressed, they can never, ever participate in the normal running of their own local economies. They can't go out and buy a new lawnmower. They won't be able to afford it. They cannot get a loan for something, like that, or they can never look forward to actually changing their own car. Yeah. Because they won't have any access to credit of any kind. And that's something that's never, ever spoken about. We have well over 1 million people that this government is prepared to move on without. They have put us all aside, and let's get let's bring in the new batch of victims here. And one of the things that actually disgusts me, and it totally disgusts me, is the Bank of Ireland for having these forums, these days outside of banks in areas. They had one at Lawn and Kilkenny and Carlow and different areas around the country, where they set up tents and were giving out free food and free drink, and they were calling it a multicultural day, when the banks could tell everybody how wonderful they were, when the Bank of Ireland could tell everybody how wonderful they were and how they could help them. They're looking for more victims. They have already dealt with and scrapped the other victims. Now they're looking for more victims. Yeah.
Well, banks are just a corporation with no emotion, and so there's no point people trying to put their morals on a bank or even on a TD, to be honest with you. And that's the problem we have. People, again, I come across people like you that turn around and go, well, surely if I'm paying some money to the bank, they should be happy with that. And in some cases, that's right. But a lot of the time, it's an asset grab, and they don't care because the money didn't exist in the first place. Again, it goes back, and I keep saying it, but it's so true, that it goes back to the fractional reserve banking system. When you understand how money works and how the banks are screwing us, then you can say, right, now we can kind of nip it in the bud. The same way that i.e. the government should be issuing the money debt-free, interest-free, sorry. It should be credit-based, not debt-based. But the banks are issuing the money, and that's a private corporation. So that's where we have to start. We have to say to the banks, look, you carry on doing what you're doing, but the government's going to set up their own monetary system, and it's going to bring back the punt. There's going to be no interest on it. There might be small admin fee, and we'll use the post offices to actually control the money flow out to the people. And you bypass the banking system. But that won't happen, because at the end of the day, the banks control everything. We are in a fascist state because the banks are controlling the government.
I agree fully. We have to, you could actually look at things like, what is happening. We're not just fighting Irish banks or banks that are working in Ireland. We're fighting the global banking system. We're fighting the global financial system. we could get into different things here that people might say, Jesus, he didn't take the right pill today. But, we could look at, seriously, groups like this Bilderberg group, and why was the likes of our Agriculture Minister, Simon Coveney, present at that group, at that meeting? Why was the year before, why was Michael Noonan there, our Finance Minister there? When these meetings are held, everybody knows where they're held, but nobody can gain access to those meetings, and there's never any report from those meetings. And who attends those meetings? Only, important heads of state from many, many countries around the world. 120 people attend those things every year. The top the top banking people turn up at these things. Even the top media people from the likes of Newsweek, they turn up there as well. So, we have to look at what's actually happening there. What are these people discussing? And we know that they're controlling the financial system. We know that they're controlling our water. They're talking about privatizing water. Why? Because water is the new oil.
Yeah.
So we have to look at those things seriously too.
Yeah, that all has to be looked at. Okay, I'm just watching the time. Steve, over to you. You have more questions there for Ken.
I have a comment here that Vin has asked me to read out to you, Ken, and it says, the moment the government borrows from a bank, they have vacated the trust position that was placed in them by the people they claim to serve. Why? Because now the bank is your government, and the spiral of everlasting debt cycles will be placed upon the shoulders of the people.
Yeah, I simply agree fully.
Yeah.
People are being made responsible. We are the victims of this. It all comes back to the biggest transfer of wealth in world history. You'll see many people posting up if the world is in debt to the tune of whatever, 25 trillion dollars. Who do we owe this money to? The fact of the matter is, it's in the hands of a very small number of vastly wealthy families around the world. That's what's happening. It's a transfer of wealth into those multinational corporations, into those huge, vastly wealthy people. And these people are getting more and more wealthy all of the time, while people in countries like Ireland and Spain and Portugal and many more countries are actually getting poorer.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Well, look what's happened in Venezuela and Greece at the moment. I mean, there's just a complete societal breakdown at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's going on. But trying to go to a local TT, like I think it's Barry Cowan, and telling him, now he might know about this, but we were told by somebody that they actually sat down and managed to talk to a TD. This was a few years ago. And they said, do you actually know what's going on? And the TD said, yes, I know what's going on, but I have a mortgage and I want a good pension, so I'm just towing the rope, and when I finish my stint, I'll just kick the bucket down the road and pass it on to somebody else.
Look, we all know, and I posted about this yesterday, we all know that the likes of Brian Cowan, who's the Minister for Finance, when things were on the up supposedly, we all know that he became Taoiseach when the country ran aground with a massive hole never to be repaired with this current system. He was well looked after. We all know that. He was actually put on the board of the Beacon Hospital. He was on the board of Topaz as well as his €3,000 per week pension. The man is probably earning roughly €10,000 per week after doing what he did to the country. Bertie Ahern is something similar. Does anybody think that the likes of Enda Kenny will not be well looked after by his financial wealthy friends? We all know that they will. They are collaborators. These people remind me of Marshal Pétain in Vichy, France. They have willingly collaborated against their own people for their own interests and for the interests of the vastly wealthy men and women, not only in Ireland, but in the world. And I think that's a traitorous action. And we must get that message out to people, because we can really create real change.
With this, next meeting that's coming up on the 24th, what are you hoping will come out from the meeting? Are you hoping that, have you got a few solutions? Are you hoping that people in the audience will have a few solutions?
What we must do is, the first thing that we must do is we must achieve a moratorium on the mortgage proceedings, the eviction proceedings that are happening in the courts, because that is the main problem. Then the banks must be forced by the government. And we have to remember that some of these banks are Irish-owned banks. And if the government itself is prepared to officially declare a housing emergency, it then allows the government to override the fiscal treaty stipulations that say we cannot bail people out, that we must continue to pay off the national debt and make that smaller. They need to officially declare a housing emergency. That will allow them to bring in the banks that they own and tell them to find a fair and sustainable solution. And that will require write-offs, because the people bailed out the banks. Now it's time that the Irish people were bailed out. I'm not just talking about people in mortgage distress. I'm talking about every homeowner in the country, because that in itself will allow ordinary people to start spending again in their local economies. Spending again means business growing again in local economies. Businesses growing means extra real jobs. I mean real jobs, not these government schemes and scams such as JobBridge. It also means that will lead to more people paying more taxes to fund our essential services. The banks will not have a liquidity problem, because this money will flow through the banks anyway. It has to flow through the banking system.
Okay, Ken. I totally agree where you're coming from, and I totally agree on your ideas there. But I'm going to be devil's advocate, and I'm going to put the banker's cap on, right? And I'm going to be the top man in Bank of Ireland. And this is why I see it happening, because I'm going to put my corporate hat on as a corporate person, right? And I'm not going to have any empathy and no morals at all, right? And this is what I'd be saying at the top. Richie Boucher, wherever his name is, who's in charge of Bank of Ireland, and the other bankers, right? And they're sitting at the top, and they're saying, you know what, I couldn't give a toss about the Irish economy. I want to asset grab. I want to get as much property as I can and land. So I don't really care about the people, and I don't care about whether the country goes back on its feet. I'm being well paid, and I'm being told what to do by my bosses, and my boss is at the top, and the shareholders are happy. So I really couldn't give a monkeys about the country or the people. We just need to grab property and asset grab, so that goes into our portfolio, and then I'll get a good job. And then when I'm finished doing my bit, I'll retire over to Antigua or maybe Cannes, and have a few million in the bank, and I'll put my feet up and I'm happy. Right?
Well, you were actually talking exactly like Richie Boucher and many of the other people, and we have to remember, many people actually don't realise that the same Richie Boucher is earning €840,000 a year as CEO of the Bank of Ireland, which is disgusting money, and that is being paid by the Irish people. But you're talking about the likes of Richie Boucher and people like him, and the government must take control.
Yeah.
The banking system, we know, is being operated for profit. It always was. It must be made to work for the people in this country. By declaring an official emergency, housing emergency, that will give the government the power to actually force the banks into finding a fair and sustainable solution. We have to remember that many of these banks, the government have the control. They can replace these people. It is in our TG's power to actually force these banks into dealing fairly with people.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. We have to take back, we have to put people in the government who will actually take back the control and do that. Steve, over to you with the questions.
And it all comes down to politics again. And that's why I'm coming at it from the political end of things, whereas I know that the likes of the Hub and other organisations are not coming at it from the political side of it. And I don't blame them, because there are many people, supporters of Fianna Fáil, Sinn Féin, Fine Gael, and the other parties. They're in mortgage distress too. So they don't, the people that I get phone calls from every day, I don't ask what political party you belong to. If they're in trouble, I will help them as best I can. And I will go along to the courts if I can to support them. But I don't ask what political party they belong to. But I know that the only real solution to this is within Leinster House. It is a political solution that will be found that can stop this. Marching to the Dáil, marching around with coffins is not going to achieve anything. It might even do us damage. We should be all part of a movement. We should be working together. We don't want to give these people the excuse that they're looking for to create divide and conquer. We want to be seen to be together, united, whether we're doing this from a political side or not. I would welcome people from Direct Democracy Ireland there. We're not going to promote the Irish Democratic Party. We're not going to promote any party at that. But I'm coming at it from the political side. The likes of the Hub are coming at it from helping people to stay in their homes, even if that means kicking this process down the road for as long as possible, and that could be years. Other groups will come at it from trying to stop evictions. We should be at a stage where evictions are not going to happen, because organisations like the Hub can completely stop that process from happening. But people need to know that the Hub exists. Yeah. Too many people already do not know. There's 95% of our population does not know that the Hub exists. We need to get that information out there, that this organisation is out there. They will help people for free. They will not charge, solicit everybody else.
And just to add to that, there are other groups out there, like the National Land League. There's still branches of the National Land League around Ireland, also Lay Litigation Ireland as well, and a number of other groups out there doing the same thing.
Yes, exactly. I know Neil from the Lay Litigation Ireland very well. You have Finbar Markey there, the National Land League, and other people as well. Like they do fantastic work. We're all fighting this on the same side.
Yeah, and this is it. This is why we have to put our differences aside and our personal agendas and work together. Now we have about 7 minutes left, Ken. So I want to pass over to Steve. Steve has a couple of things there that he wants to pass over to you.
Yeah, yeah, I've got a couple of things. Just one, when we're talking about the Hub doing fantastic work and 95% of the population not knowing about the Hub or other such groups as the Hub, I'd love to see RTE and the government's reaction if the Hub or lay litigants or Direct Democracy or anyone who's helping people in mortgage distress, if they were to put an ad, get a 30-second ad slot and have it run on RTE, I wonder, would RTE actually run the ad? Where if you had someone, we're from the Hub, if you're in mortgage distress, we can help, and it's completely free. You'd wonder, would there be a lot of red tape that they'd have to go through in order to get an ad on TV? Because, the fact that most of the people are watching RTE and the likes, if that ad would wake up those 95% of people in an instant.
I think, again, you see, I do look on the fact, Steve, that I found that I doubled the amount of votes that I was told I was going to get by simply knocking on doors.
Yeah.
We've arranged something like that. It's actually getting maybe 20 people in every county, 20 dedicated people in every county with leaflets that are prepared to knock on every single door in each constituency and tell people that they can get help for free. Because most of those people will not admit to being in mortgage distress, but if they hear that you're there talking to them about mortgage distress, they will take your leaflet and they will read it. Now you're getting the information out to people, because, you could put an advertisement on RT and it could last for 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds even. You're not going to hit the vast amount of the population. You're probably going to hit maybe 300,000 or 400,000 people, but we need to hit 4 million people out there. And this is going to be down to knocking on doors, telling people that there is help out there, and telling them that this problem actually exists, because many people out there, while they may be experiencing this problem themselves, they see it as a personal problem. Everybody else is okay. I'm the one, my family is in mortgage distress, but everybody else is doing okay. We have to tell people that we have to tell everybody that this problem actually exists. This is a national crisis.
Yeah, it's kind of like Ken, years ago when members of the church were interfering with children in schools, and again, like the priest was almost he was revered, and no one spoke about the likes of that, and then it was only like maybe 30 years later that people started to speak about it, and unfortunately, the sad reality could possibly be that the people who are in mortgage distress now will end up losing their homes, and they won't talk about it because of the same, I don't know, what would you call it, Irish pride, where they're afraid to admit it. But I have to say, people are kind of waking up though. But it just seems very slow.
There is help for them, and that they can actually call a number and they will speak to somebody that is going to help them to remain in their homes. Many people going into those courts are afraid that they will not be in their home in a month's time. Whereas we need to get the information out there that those people will be in their homes this coming Christmas and the next Christmas and the Christmas after that, while we're fighting for fairness and justice within the political scene.
Yeah, it's just sad though, Ken, that while you and others are fighting for that political justice for these people in mortgage distress, the governments and the people and the banks and all, they're busy working as well. They're not sitting on their laurels, as I'm sure you know. They're busy working as well, trying to find where you're going to go next, what loophole you may find, and they're busy patching up the whole damn thing, trying to stay one step ahead of everyone.
Yeah, of course they are. But you see, these banks know that the vast majority of people are not getting help of any kind. Yeah. But we have to show these banks, and we have to show the government, that now there is a massive movement out there of people that are not just going to go marching and demonstrating and shouting on the streets, that there's a massive movement of people out there who are actually knocking on doors. These people are seen walking down through the streets. What are they doing? They're telling people that there is a massive crisis in Ireland that's completely hidden, and most of the people that are hiding it will actually say, Jesus, I like what these people are doing. And it's about getting that information out to the public. The media are not going to help us. An advertisement on RTE, I don't know what it would cost for 15, 20 seconds. It would cost an awful lot of money. We need people on the streets. We need people knocking on doors. This is like a general election campaign. We need about 20 people in every single constituency that will sit down, go through exactly what they're going to say to people, have a leaflet, hand people this leaflet. Even if they don't, admit to being in mortgage distress, you just tell them that there is help for people in mortgage distress. Here's the leaflet. And we get this information into the hands of every household in the country.
And Ken, also, I'd just like to add to that, the Hub are doing a fantastic job, but it's not fair putting all the pressure on just a handful of people, that people have to get up and help themselves and help others. Because exactly. I know, I've been over in the Hub Mullingar on a number of occasions with Sandra and Sharon and Dermot, and I've spoken to Byron and been involved with National Land League. And it's always just a handful of people trying to help everybody else. So people need to go up, just to be blunt, people need to get up off their arse and actually go and start getting involved and helping people out, because they could be next if they're not there already. So because the Hub and National Land League, and I'm sure Lay Litigation Ireland, all need volunteers and help.
Exactly. Because what we actually need then is, we have the likes of the Hub Mullingar, the Hub Wexford. We need hubs in every single county, and probably more than one. But we can actually achieve that if we work at this together.
Yeah.
It should be a mass movement of people who see the injustice of what's happened. And we can actually make this happen. I have no doubt about that.
I do think also, Ken, that we should be, on a poor county basis, we should be naming and shaming the actual TDs in that county. Basically send a letter to them and say, right, tell us what you did over the last 5 years. And then put it up on a website so people can see, and people can click on the website, have a map of Ireland, and you click on the county, and you have the list of TDs, and you have a list of the things that they did and didn't do. And
I agree fully. And not only that, we should have a list of people in each county as well. A list of who these process servers are. Because process servers go around serving these documents on behalf of banks, taking the 30 pieces of silver.
Yeah.
You know, these people live in our own localities. We have to let people know who they are. And, you know, I would not speak to these people, never mind deal with them. I wouldn't sit down and have a cup of coffee with any of these people. These people need to be boycotted in their own areas. It's the same as solicitors.
And again,
you know, we need to know what solicitors are acting for banks and put these people under pressure as well. Because, again, they are being paid well and handsomely by the banks to slaughter the ordinary little Irish peasants as they see us.
Yeah, and again, now I know there was a website set up a while ago. We've just a couple of minutes left. I know there's a website set up a while ago where a chap, he did a great job. Basically, it was called, I think, Rate Your Solicitor. And basically you go in and you rate your solicitor. And he was attacked, basically, and he had to pull it down, and he was being intimidated and everything else. That's what we've heard. And that website had to go down. So I'd like to know who's doing that. You know, Judge Judy, I mean, she's a big advocate of having cameras in court, because if you have cameras in, the judges will behave themselves. So I think if TDs have nothing to hide, then why would there be a problem putting a website up there saying rate your TD and what they have done for the local community and what they have agreed to and not agreed to?
Look, Steve, no matter, you know, we think we know people and who they are and what they are, but unfortunately there are people out there who have, you know, by their own actions have proven that they may have different agendas or whatever else. But if we have a mass movement of people who are, you know, 90% of them are thinking the same, well then we can get by what the small percentage of people who may have different agendas are there. You know, this is about the people of Ireland, the people that are living here. We have to protect them. Simple as that. Yeah. I have to protect my family. I have to protect my 3 little grandsons. I have to protect their future. I do not want to see them being raised like cattle to export. Yeah. Because our government doesn't give a damn about people leaving this country. The more that leave, the merrier. Yeah. They actually want that one. If they could put this 1 million people plus on these coffin ships and off to America with you, that would more than please them. They will have more property to distribute to their wealthy friends. Exactly.
Well, okay, Ken, we're going to leave it there, but Steve has something quick just to say regarding about Rate Your Solicitor. Is that a website? Is there something, a court case going on there?
This is rateyoursolicitor.com, that the site you spoke of. It says this site is registered by Dr. Mark Humphrey, School of Computing, Dublin City University. I've put the link in the chat room there, but it does say on various dates between the 9th of July 2007 and the 3rd day of August 2011, the said defendant falsely published on this website of and concerning the plaintiff, that was Damien MP Tansey, of him and the way of his said profession, the words defamatory of the plaintiff. Okay, so it's legal mumbo jumbo. I don't understand it.
Okay, it's a liability issue basically. Somebody said something and they're disagreeing with it, and they're using that as defamatory to actually take down the website. Okay, so with the TD idea, again, we'd have to be very careful, and basically all you'd be doing is reporting what they've done and what they haven't done, which would be in the papers anyway, and it'd be common, it'd be knowledge that you could ask the TDs anyway. So there wouldn't be anything defamatory in there. But Ken, we have to let you go. We've reached that time. Thank you very much for coming on. Much appreciated. I'm going to pass.
For bringing on the programme.
Yeah, no problem. We'll have to do it again, definitely. Maybe after the next collection meeting, we'll actually do we'll do a part 2 and talk about it. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your contact information to let people know where to find the IDP party and to find information about yourself. Steve.
Thanks very much, Alan.
Yeah, Ken, it's been great information. A lot of chat on the chat room. A lot of people interested in what you're saying, a little stories getting swapped back and forward there. And we do have your website, irishdemocraticparty.ie. I have put that up in the chat room. I will put it up again. And there's a lot of information on that. Is there any other way, any other websites that you have there where people can find out more information?
Well, people can, like anybody that's in mortgage distress or anybody that's interested in this new system or whatever it is, they can contact me directly on my own phone number. You have my phone number there. It's 085 1432898. People can contact me there. or they can contact me via Facebook on my own personal Facebook page, or I have a public page there as well. But people can contact me on any of those things.
Great
and
stuff.
They can find out anything that they want about me or about the Irish Democratic Party.
Fantastic. Okay, Ken, just stay with us there. We're just going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, and we're back. Good information there from Ken Smallen. Ken has agreed to come on and do a part 2 after the next meeting. Again, that's the 24th of June a day for your diary, the Collection Hotel in Portlaoise.
I was going to jump up there and have my stocking and suspenders on with my makeup doing the time warp in the studio.
He does have them on.
Yeah, no, good information from Ken. Again, it's going to be in the Collection Hotel on Saturday the 24th. I recommend you get down. As we said, the last meeting I had a chance to get down to, there was loads. Everybody knew what the problem was, but there was a very few people with solutions and practical solutions. Not some airy-fairy stuff, but practical solutions. And you have to remember, wherever the solution is, you have to consider the cost as well. Getting an advert on RTA is a great idea. Number one, would they play it? Number two, how much would it cost?
Oh, yeah. No, I would just love to see if, let's say, the hub, who are making a difference, and when I say the hub, obviously I mean everyone. I'm not just kind of saying the hub are doing great work. Everyone is doing great work. But as an example, if the hub were to go and say to RT, okay, we've been to the production studio, here's our ad, we want to run it, it's 30 seconds long, we want to run it just before the news, just after the news. I think you get a decision of how many times you want it run per day, and obviously if it's run in the morning when no one's watching TV, it's probably not going to be very expensive, but they're kind of prime time really, in the even time, it probably will be more expensive. But it'd be interesting to see, would they run it? Well, would they run it past their team of adjudicators or whatever and say, would they come back and say, well, we can't run it because, would there be
some excuses,
red tape to cut through?
Well, I can probably guarantee that the cost of doing it in prime time is going to be a lot higher than doing it at 12 o'clock on Sunday night. I mean, it's obvious the slots are going to be expensive, and you're right there, it will be. Well, it's worthwhile, but I do believe the naming and shaming of the local TDs, because Thomas Bourne, I seen him down in Trim Court when I was down there, and he was down there with another guy, and he didn't seem interested whatsoever. But what he wanted to say was, when somebody interviewed him, oh yes, I was down at Trim Court and I was taking a big interest in what was going on. He was no more interested in what was going on than the security guard who was there, the guard that was there. He was just there to say he was there. So if people seen him there, just so to be seen down in Trim, I just don't believe he has any interest. Any politicians that go down there, it's just purely got to do with trying to, look like they care when they don't care. They're on the gravy train, and why did you want to upset the gravy train? You need empathy, I think, for the people. The proof of the pudding was that day in the water protest in Kells when Thomas Bourne was there as well, and you went up to him and you had words with him. He couldn't get away from you quick enough. Yeah, well, because you weren't shaking his hand. No, in fact, you were calling a spade a spade. He was a parasite. That's what he is. That's all they are. I mean, these people. If you went up to them and said, look, these people are being evicted from the house. What are you doing about it? And they start making excuses. You'd say, look, don't give me excuses. You obviously lack empathy. You don't care about these people. Because if you did, you'd be like Claire Daly and Mick Wallace, making the effort and exposing stuff. See, the party whip system is controlling everybody in the mainstream parties. That's the problem. It's like when you're in a corporate company, it's the same thing. You toe the rope. If you don't toe the rope, you get kicked out. So you have to toe the rope. So even though you might know what's going on in the company, you have to keep your mouth shut and keep your head down and do what you're told. And in the corporate world, it's the exact same. So politics is like the corporate world. It's the same thing. It's all about control. And even though there's a leak gets out to the public about a company not doing well, and then there's loads of phone calls, they'll get their PR marketing people to do interviews and go, oh yes, that was a rumour and there's nothing wrong with that and our company is fine. That's just the way the game is played, and politics is no different. My concern is that, and if people have a chance to speak to a counsellor or speak to a TD, ask them, do they know what fractional reserve banking is and usury and what's going on? Do they know what it means? Because if they don't know what the problem is, how the bloody hell are they going to fix it? And this was my argument down in Kells in that meeting. And again, it was Dumb and Dumber. They were saying that the mortgage to rent scheme, oh, that's a good idea. No, it's not a good idea. It's an asset grab. And the system's all wrong, has to change. And we have to put people in power that know what's going on to stop what's going on. That's the way it works. But that's the way it should work. Now, we are planning to, we've tried twice to have a pre-record with Mark Stevens for the show next week. And twice the Skype has let us down. So we're going to try a third time. And we're going to do a pre-record with Mark this week for next week. But if that doesn't happen, we'll have somebody in next week anyway. We'll organise something anyway. So we'll see what we can do. We want to do a part 2 of the jurisdiction and talk about that and talk about the plea of guilty as well on a letter in court and a couple of other things. So we'll go through it, Mark. We'll do a part 2. That's the plan of attack. What have you got planned for the week, Steve?
I don't know. No, I'm back to work on Tuesday, obviously. And we'll see where that leads us. No immediate plans. No major plans.
No. Okay. I would just say to people, keep an eye out on what's going on globally as well. Venezuela, France, Greece. There's a lot of things going on with them countries. The banking system, Deutsche Bank, ATM problems I mentioned earlier on the show. Just keep an eye on what's going on because there's rumblings. There's a lot of financial experts out there who are saying that we are now really, they're kicking the bucket down the road and have been since 2008. And, maybe things are warming up at the moment that something's going to happen. So, again, just keep an eye out on what's going on. And also, there's a lot of flooding going on. There's a few countries experiencing flooding for the first time. Again, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, as we always say. So, a little preparation, just in case something happens, is always good. So, I just recommend that you do that. Okay, well, for myself, Alan James, take it easy. Yes, I see Joan mentioned the Brazil virus, the Zika virus, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And there's a big push on for that. The good thing is, I heard a news report on this, and they said about certain countries that the Mozzies will be visiting, and one of them that it won't visit is Ireland because it's too cold. As soon as they hit the Irish air, they'd be dead. So I think we're going to be okay. Maybe. I don't know. Well, the Mozzies won't be over here anyway. But for myself, anyway, take it easy. For myself, Alan James, take it easy. Have a safe week. If you have any information or any ideas, obviously contact us and let us know. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, yeah, good show this evening. Lots of great information from Ken Smallen. Do check out his website and do get involved. As was said last week, you can be one of three people. You can be the one who throws litter on the ground. You can be the one who says you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should pick it up, or you can be the one who picks it up. Let's all strive to be number 3. Anyway, stay tuned if you're listening on the People's Internet Radio stream. Vin is up next at 9 p.m. and our stream will be going off now, and we will do it all again in 7 days' time. So until then, take care of myself, Stephen George. Bye-bye.